So I basically I put together a lot of like talks and panels, specifically talking about the intersection of being a black female fat geek woman in this space, and just what that means and how it translates. So I do a lot of stuff where I talk about anti-blackness, I talk about sexism, I talk about anti-capitalism, anti-whiteness, all that good stuff that means that nobody will sponsor me. But I think it's actually an important message because it's some of the stuff is things I had to go through myself, and I think I know it's been helpful for other people to kind of hear about it because they're having similar experiences. Which is one of the things that put me into this very strange space of being like, yo, white people really messed up, like y'all real messed up. And so I talk about that pretty bluntly also. I also sell stuff. There you go.
I'm just gonna sit over here and be messed up, y'all.
So what caused you to do that? Like what caused you to take that route with the whole cosplay and all that stuff that you have to promote more, I guess, anti-establishment?
So, to be honest, it really truly kicked in hard when Trump was about to win the nomination. It wasn't like after he won the nomination and he won the election. It was like when I saw he was gaining states, and I was like, people are really voting for this joker? And like I started listening to what people were saying around me, and I was like, okay, they're not being confronted on their nonsense enough. Like they need to be pushed back on. And like it really came to a head with my husband's family, where they were hardcore Trump people, and then of course there were all the shootings, the murders by the police and stuff, and it was just happening all the time, like all the time. And I was seeing too many people, mostly white people, but also black people, saying, we need to get the whole story. We need to find out what happened. We need to be more patient. And I was like, that's nonsense. This was a person who was murdered, like straight up murdered. I don't even understand how we're having a debate about this. And that actually made me, so I started writing about that because I needed an outlet for it. And the responses I got was people really weren't thinking about this stuff. They weren't having those conversations. And I said, wow, like for me, that was just, that should have been the conversation. It should have been like the starting point. So I realized, I hoped that if I wrote more about it, more people would be exposed and start changing how they saw things and actually, start fixing their stuff.
With the work that you've been doing, promoting, or I should say, with your cosplay,
Mm-hmm.
and have you been seeing progress as far as people understanding your message?
Yes.
In what ways? That was the second part. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I do get a lot of feedback from people, and to be honest with you, the people who I get the most feedback from are usually black people in interracial relationships, because they weren't in a position where they felt like they could actually assert themselves and have space for themselves in that relationship. And you know this because we're conditioned in this country, you're not actually from here, but we're conditioned in this country to kind of defer to whiteness, and you learn it like from the birth, right? So a lot of times when people are in interracial relationships, they don't challenge their partner's racism. They don't challenge the people around them. And so they internalized all of it, and they were feeling like less than in their own like intimate relationships. I decided I wasn't going to do that at all. So me and my husband, we fought and fought and fought and fought, and then he changed. And I'm not saying that he's like, he's like, now he can say, okay, I know I grew up in America, I am racist, I grew up in anti-blackness, I have to consciously be aware of it and work to kind of shift it. So he's doing the work, not as fast as I would like, but he's also a human being, but he's doing the work. And so seeing that happen and knowing that can happen, other people have come to me, and I've gotten so many letters where some people they've done it in their relationships have improved, they've done it in their relationships have ended, but they felt better about it, and they were empowered to actually, take control of that narrative in their lives and no longer treat themselves as a second-class citizen in their relationships.
How do you deal with the fact that you're in an interracial relationship, but yet you're promoting something that is pro-black, if you will?
how do I deal with it? I mean, I just do it. So.
Then I should ask, I'm sorry.
How's he dealing with it?
Right, no, it's not even that. It's like maintaining a credibility. For instance, if
like you actually have to interrogate their actions, look at what they're doing, and seeing if they're actually doing things that are supporting that pro-black message. If they aren't, don't deal with them, because at that point they're actually supporting, anti-blackness. They are promoting white supremacy. So you have to actually be critical. You can't have heroes. You have to be critical of people. When I make mistakes, I try to own those mistakes. I admit it. I was just in the panel right before this where I had to say I capitalized on my husband's privilege. I know that I do. I will send him to do things for me that I'm like, oh, I might catch some crap for that. You go do it. You walk over there and handle it. That it's kind of crappy, but I'm owning that. I own that I do it. So if the people who are doing this type of work, because you see it a lot, and I always found it interesting that the black people you saw online who were speaking out the most about racism were in interracial relationships, and it seemed like that would undermine their credibility. But what happens is, when you're in that relationship, you find yourself in intimate spaces with more white people than you ever have before. Because suddenly you have their friends and their family and they're in your house and you spend the holidays with them, where before it was never like that. You didn't have people like that in your house, and they think that because you're with that white person that you're safer, and they let their guard down a little bit and more of their anti-blackness comes out if they're hiding it. Some of them don't even hide it. Some of them are just very open about their nonsense. And so, you end up, as a black person, you end up really confronting that all the time, unexpectedly. And so it makes you more aware of it, and in order to survive it, you kind of have to push back and start maintaining your own space, because otherwise you just shrink in on yourself more and more and more, trying to accommodate everybody else in that relationship, and that's not healthy.
So basically, what got you into cosplaying? Especially being a big cosplayer and everything,
You mean fat?
I didn't want to say it.
I'll say it.
But
being a fat cosplayer?
I don't want to say fat cosplayer. But, I was saying we can say plus size, if we politically correct, plus size cosplayer, and what message do you have for black plus size cosplayers, or just black cosplayers in general?
So, years ago, I wanted to do it. It never occurred to me that I couldn't do it. It was just mind you, when I started cosplaying, YouTube was maybe 6 months old. Twitter didn't exist. Facebook was in its infancy. The social media stuff that was going on, Instagram didn't exist. It wasn't there. So there wasn't that level of visibility and people being able to comment on the stuff that you were doing. You came to the con, the only people who saw you were the people at the con, and some of them would post pictures on their personal websites. But if you didn't know where those sites were, you didn't get seen. So I didn't think it was a big deal. And then, I don't know, I guess it was maybe a few years ago I started realizing that there were a ton of people who weren't doing it because they didn't see people who looked like them doing it. And it became a bigger deal. I've always had I've always been about living my life, and not really worrying about what other people think about it. And if people in my life have a problem with it, they don't have to be in my life. So I'm not hurting anybody doing this. It's a lot of fun. I find ways to have the costumes be comfortable, mostly. Comfort is not really part of cosplay, but as comfortable as a cosplay could be, but also look good on me. I recognize that there are some things it's funny, almost every costume where it looks like I don't have on a lot of clothing, I usually have on the most clothing, because I have on layers of stuff to make me look like a certain shape. But it's a challenge to see, can I recreate that? So for me, it's about the creativity, and if someone has that pull to do it, if they feel like they need to express themselves in that way, where you are making your body a piece of art, do it. Have fun. You only get one life, so why not?
How do you measure success?
How do I measure success? With what?
With what you're doing, in getting into this whole genre. How do you measure your success?
I really don't look at it as a success thing. I enjoy doing it. So for me, cosplay was just it was a hobby that I did, and I had fun. I only did it once a year. I did it for Dragon Con, and I didn't worry about it. I didn't know it would become this industry like it is now. a couple of years back, I was like, well, you know, I'm a writer, and I keep saying I'm gonna write a fiction book, like speculative fiction. I still haven't done that. I'm working on it, but I still haven't done it. But I said I want to build an audience for that, and actually being a cosplayer, you know, that gets eyes on me, and I could use social media to build that presence. So in that respect, I was like, if I can build an audience, that's a success. But, you know, there are certain things that make building an audience kind of difficult, and I was being very choosy about it. The books that I started writing are now essay books, and I write essays about very, very hard things in our culture, about relationships and racism and sexism and sizeism and all of these things, and they are not comfortable topics for people. So that changed how my audience was going to develop, and I had to decide where I was going to go and how I was going to promote myself. So I didn't go to any of the mainstream sites. I don't participate in mainstream cosplay in a lot of ways because it's a very, very toxic environment. I very specifically focused on people of color and the groups where they frequent, geeks of color, that kind of stuff. And now I'm looking at like plus size fashion. I'm finding that there are a lot of, you know, plus size black women who are interested in doing cosplay, but they just don't feel like it. So in 2 months, I'm going to be doing a panel at the Curvy Fashionista Style Expo, which is just a fashion show, but now they're going to have some cosplayers that are talking about it.
Tracy had a question. I knew you couldn't see her because she didn't have the peripheral.
Sorry. I was just thinking, because being a big, beautiful black woman, and I have friends that cosplay, like one friend in particular, and she puts up pictures up, and she's a thick girl. She's thick, fine, if you will. And, you know, she gets complaints. She has people telling her stuff like, well, you know, you wanted a cosplay, maybe you need to lose a couple pounds, or, you know, why you have that outfit on, make it look like on you. So how do you deal with that kind of stuff? I know you have to have like a thick skin, and like you said, the environment's kind of toxic anyway. How do you deal? What makes you go forward from there when you have things like that going on?
First, if it's online on my social media, my personal social media, those comments don't stay. If somebody puts it on my page, it gets deleted, they get banned. I don't care. Like, their opinion of me is actually none of my business. You know, I'm gonna do what I do. If you like it, cool. If you don't, cool. It's not about you. So when it comes to social media, I'm very, very much telling people, maintain your space. I know people will convince you that you should leave every comment up there. Don't do that. This is your space. You wouldn't let somebody take a dump in your house. Don't let them take a dump on your page. Get rid of them. Borrow them from that and handle it. So, it's really funny because I do find a lot of people, they don't actually like police their space that way. I don't even like using that word. They don't manage their space that way. They don't actually set up boundaries. And that's another thing, like writing about my relationship was something where I learned early on I had to have boundaries as to how much I was willing to say and to let people in. And people would make demands. I had horrible people say stuff like, well, you better not have kids with him, you know, and, you know, like, yeah, you're just like, who are you? Why are you? Bye. You know, and then I had this notoriously like black woman hating black man, actually, Tariq Nasheed. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
I know that guy.
Woo! My essay that I did about our marriage, he did a video about it, basically calling me, you know, a bedwench, and his followers started coming at me. This was like, I think maybe 3 months after I had my online profile. So I was just like, oh, I would wake up to people calling me names, and
It's pretty good.
like it was nasty.
Right out the gate, though. That's pretty good.
Like,
wow, who's this girl?
Yeah, so I was like on that, and I actually had that moment where, I woke up one morning and I had a panic attack because I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't have to see what they write. I don't have to look at this. And there's also a program online that will, you know, preemptively ban people who have been identified as problem folks on like Twitter, so that they can't even get to your profile. So I found that, I instituted that, and with people started giving me trouble, I just got rid of them. I don't need that audience. That's not for me. Yeah, that's how I handle it, and I don't really worry about them.
Eons. That's what
Damn, man, I ain't that old.
I like messing with you. But you been in the game for a while and everything, and you've seen everything change, I guess, with more like popularity and everything, because you remember you said, you know, YouTube was small,
yeah,
and Facebook was still a baby and everything. So with all the social media platforms, how do you feel about the new cosplayers doing what they do, especially like Instagram following, how they get their followers with Patreon, how they're doing their Patreon and everything. You know, I don't want to say lose, but with lose and everything, like how do you feel about that? And I have a follow-up question with that. You know, if anybody else has a question for that.
Okay. They grown. They can do what they want. The thing is, you know, social media is always going to be fickle, and there's always going to be people who are going to be more appealing to a broader range of people than I'm ever going to be appealing to. I recognize that. My growth has been very, very slow, even though I put out, I believe, to be quality content. It might not be, but I believe it to be so. But it's not strictly cosplay, and that's what's confusing for people. Like, it's not just that. Those women who are doing the photo sets and stuff on Patreon, and they're putting out stuff every month, and they're building every month, they are working hard for that money. I don't have time to do all that. So I respect them for doing it. I've asked myself if that's something I want to do, and you know, I'm older, and I'm still kind of really stuck in respectability politics, where you don't, if you want to be respected, you don't do this and you don't do that. So I'm constantly kind of battling myself about what that means for me. But I respect them for doing it, because it's not easy to do. Like, we act like it is, but it's a big decision, because you know that it's going to impact other things in the future, and you're taking a risk. And what if you bear it all and then nothing happens? You get nothing from it. Like, that's a huge risk. So no, I don't have a problem with it. I think people are going to engage with cosplay however they want. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I get irritated, like the onesie people. I'm like, oh, y'all just got these little onesies on. You know, you go, you get changed, it takes you 5 minutes to put on the wig and come out. It took me 2 hours, not this one's easy, but other stuff is like yesterday, I was Proxima Midnight, it took me like 2.5 hours to put that thing on. And I'm like, y'all out here in onesies and everybody loves you. Sometimes I get angry at that and a little jealous, I will admit that, envious. And I do get but envious when I see people who aren't really doing a lot of work and they're getting super popular. But that's the world we live in, and I can't change that. I know why it's happening, and all I can do is what I can do. So, do you have a follow-up, or did I already answer it?
The follow-up is, because years ago there was a certain cosplayer. She's in the same room as you. She said she felt like the golden age of cosplaying is over. You probably know what I'm talking about. If you do, but do you feel that the golden age cosplay is over? Do you feel there's a title of like, as DC, like golden, silver, and all, and bronze age of cosplay? You know, how do you feel about the newer cosplays? I mean, we just talked about that, like cosplayers and everything, with I guess so-called drama. What's their drama like? You know, during you guys' time, as big as the drama is now in certain cosplayers, either with the black, non-black, and everything else. You know, how do you feel about it?
Everything changes. So when social media came about, media changed. The country changed. How we had conversations changed. Everything was going to be impacted by that. Cosplay had to adapt and change if it was going to continue to exist. Makes sense. The people who complain about it are the ones who have trouble shifting gears. They don't like the fact that it's not what it was. They probably also had the issues with how they look in the mirror too now, because you get older, you change, and people respond to you differently as you age, and your body gets big, just whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's so. Don't get me wrong. My first and second Dragon Cons were awesome. Because one, I didn't know people were going to stop me and want to take pictures, and that we'd have this community and all of that. I didn't know that was there. But I like change and I like growth, and it's fun to see how many other people are engaging in it and how they're engaging in it and why. You know, some people are doing it just because they think it makes them popular, you know? Like, they think they're going to come in and have, like, a bunch of friends all of a sudden. And it's like, nah, we are the same humans you don't like. The people from high school and the same, politics are going on. So it's the same thing. We just do it, very colorful.